for an actual the Joseph Smith Book of Breathings, there's one by Robert Ridner, published in Dialogue and republished in the Journal of Studies, and one by Michael Rhodes, the Hoare Book of Breathings, published by Farms. I just want to mention this as an example of the give and take in Book of Abraham studies. This is a papyrus, not from the Joseph Smith collection, that has a lion couch scene. So you see the lion couch and an Anubis figure behind it. And do we have it circled? Okay. In the box is the name Abraham in Greek letters, immediately underneath this illustration, showing that someone saw a connection between Abraham and this lion couch scene. So this is a good example of the give and take. John Gee publishes an article about this in Insights, which is the Farms newsletter. And then a little, which is another developed version of the article in the Ensign. And that's obviously on LDS.org if you want to read that. Then Ed Ashmont publishes a privately circulated critique of Gee's work and says, you know, he went too far with this and with that. And then John Gee published a rejoinder to Ashmont with one of the all-time great titles in the history of the Farms Review, Abracadabra, Isaac and Jacob. And it's even funnier if you know what Ashmont's argument is. So, but I think this is good. I mean, this is, you know, I'm a lawyer, and lawyers are used to the adversarial system, and there's give and take, and people pound back and forth, and positions get refined that way. I think if you read all four of these, you're going to be better off than if you just read the first one. So I don't feel badly about that at all. Farms has been a major source of work on the Book of Abraham in recent years. And the flagship series is the Studies in the Book of Abraham. First, and this is going to be an encyclopedic set of volumes, large, handsome volumes. When they're done, there will be 15 or 20 or maybe more. The first one was Traditions about the Early Life of Abraham. And this is that whole thing about taking the English text of the Book of Abraham seriously. We already mentioned the Rhodes translation, which is a very well done book. It's my favorite of all the translations. This is the volume that's in preparation now. It's not out yet. I actually have a chapter in this volume, so I'll be curious to see that when it comes out. And then there's going to be translations of the other papyri in forthcoming volumes. I think we're kind of out of time, right? Okay. So there's more on the PowerPoint. As I say, this will be up after the conference. So with that, I think we'll close this portion of it and turn it over to questions. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and take this first one here. It says, what are some of the speculations of the fate of the lost part of the translation? I don't know if maybe Kevin has any other thoughts, but I think that, I mean, as a speculation, there's lots of possibilities. You know, either, you know, just destroyed at Joseph Smith's time, you know, shortly thereafter. You would think they would have kept those things safe. You know, of course, with early Book of Commandments being burned and Book of Mormons being burned and people being driven from their homes. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities how these translations could have been lost or destroyed. I mean, even the original copy of the dictated copy of the Book of Mormon that Oliver Cowdery wrote down was kept in what they thought was a safe place in the cornerstone, and water got in and destroyed it. So I think that, you know, that's open to lots of possibilities. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
That's it. Oh, yeah. If you're interested in that, you need to read the Stan Kimball article in Dialogue. I mean, he goes about as far as humanly possible being a detective, trying to trace all this. But you could probably, you know, someone could pick up the trail and try to find it. Mark Hoffman was probably thinking about trying to forge a facsimile too, because there's an argument that facsimile 2 survived. That would have taken a lot of chutzpah, and I don't think he could have pulled it off, and maybe that's why he didn't actually try and do it. But he was thinking about it. He had some papyrus on consignment from Ken Rendell. And so, Do you believe that Oliver's description of papyrus containing rubrics included the papyrus the Book of Abraham came from? This is referring to a letter that Oliver Cowdery wrote in which he described the, there's some question about what he was describing, but whatever he described it was written in black ink and a portion in red. And those red portions are called rubrics. And now some of the Book of the Dead manuscripts have rubrics. The Sen Papyrus has no trace of rubrics. I think the question is asking, did the Sen Papyrus have rubrics? And the answer to that is no. Is there a better translation of the Book of the Dead than Budge's? Let me qualify this. I am not an Egyptologist, so if we had John Gee or Michael Rhodes or someone like that up here, they could give an authoritative answer to that. I do know enough to know that people like that, it's a pet peeve of theirs, that people continue to rely on Budge. There are these paperback Dover publications, the Book of the Dead, and Budge is the early part of the 20th century. This is very dated stuff. And so, yes, there are better translations available of the Book of the Dead than Budge. I know there's one by Joseph Allen that I have, but again, I'm not an Egyptologist, so take whatever I say with a grain of salt. What evidence exists that the Book of Abraham is from God? Well, the presentation was helpful. A helpful scan of various critical and historical issues dealing with the Book of Abraham and did not give evidence of its divine origin. Well, that wasn't really our purpose. Our purpose was to deal with the polemics of it. We're bracketing, doctrine or devotional approaches. So, yeah, there's much more that could be said. We're just dealing with the anti-Mormon arguments in this presentation. So what evidence is there? Well, it's like any other religious text. I mean, you have to come at it from a perspective of faith. And there are lots of evidences. If you want a place to start, read the first volume in the Farm Studies in the Book of Abraham series, Traditions About the Early Life of Abraham, and compare that to the Book of Abraham. And that will be a positive introduction of evidences for the Book of Abraham. If 95% of the Joseph, and it's more like 85% of the Joseph Smith papyri were destroyed in the museum fire, and this 95% contained that which was translated, why do we care about the irrelevant amount remaining, at least from a Book of Abraham translation perspective? This is assuming the missing papyrus theory, which is that the source for the Book of Abraham was among that which was lost as part of the fire or otherwise. So why do we care about that which is extant? Well, that which is extant is all we have, number one. Number two, the critical arguments against the Book of Abraham are trying to make an argument that this material is the source for the Book of Abraham. And so we have to deal with this material from that perspective. But you're right, if you take the missing papyrus view, then except for facsimile number, or Joseph Smith Papyrus number 1, which is the original source for facsimile number 1, the rest of the material is kind of irrelevant. But Farms is going to publish translations of the Book of the Dead manuscripts in the Joseph Smith collection. They're just like any other Book of the Dead manuscripts, but since they belong to Joseph, they were part of the collection, they were displayed by Lucy Mack Smith. I think we do have an historical interest.
If some of the papyri were destroyed in fire, such as the scroll of Seminus and others, how do we know we have them? We have fragments of all of them except for Menephes. That one, which had chapter 45 of the Book of the Dead, is the only one that we don't have anything left of. But if I remember correctly, there was, I don't remember if it was in the Kirtland Egyptian papers, but we have notes from that, I believe, the Kirtland Egyptian papers, so we can tie that to Menephes. So that's the only one that is completely missing. The rest of them, we do have some fragments that survived.